This is the mortising machine that I use when I mortise my hubs for the spokes. You've seen it in other videos, but this is a little more in-depth view. It has a milling table on the base which allows me to go laterally or in and out. This uses what is called a hollow chisel mortiser. It is a square chisel with an auger bit on the inside which removes the bulk of the wood, while the square chisel squares up the corners. And this allows us literally to drill a square hole. I also use a Destaco clamp to help hold down the material in general mortising. The main head of this mortising jig I've mounted to a vertical metal shaper. The head on the shaper is designed to oscillate up and down. So by attaching the mortising head to this oscillating mechanism, it allows me to raise and lower the whole head of the mortising machine. I have also designed this head to pivot on the oscillating head, so I can swivel my head to gain angles either right or left to any degree that I choose. So this is the mortising machine that I use. And over the years I have built and designed 3 different styles of mortising jigs. This is the first one that I used. It was fairly simple, but it was meant to slide side to side. I used this primarily for Sarvin buggy hubs. The bolts on either end were stationary, one position only, and the indexing pin also only had one position. But it was adjustable for different lengths of hubs. And since my indexing pin was stationary in one position only, I had to make 4 different styles of discs that indexed to this indexing pin. And I had one built for 10 spokes, 12 spokes, 14 spokes, and also one for 16 spokes. So this one was my first design. Then I went to my second design. Instead of 4 discs, I put them all in one. Goes from 10 to 12 to 14 to 16. And instead of using an indexing pin that was restricted to one location, I made it possible to go to multiple locations. And I simply used a rubber band to keep pressure of the pin into the disc. They didn't last long, but they were easy to replace. And instead of stationary pivot bolts, I also made the bolts on either end to be adjustable in 1-inch increments. This allowed me to taper my mortises front or back simply by putting the hub in at an angle. Now my first jig simply sat in an open slide, but the problem with the mortising machine is the upward pressure when you remove the bit. So my second one I built on a slide that was enclosed. And I also designed the posts on either end for more adjustments. And within the slide, I also designed 4 bolts that I could adjust this slide side to side, or I could even adjust it at an angle. Now the maximum length on this mortising jig was about 16 inches. Then after this second one, I moved into my third design. This one was designed specifically for the borax wagon and designed for large hubs. So everything became much larger and much heavier consequently, and is designed for 12, 14, 16, and 18 spoke hubs. And since this mortising jig is designed not only for larger hubs, but also for much heavier hubs, we have the ability to add these rings to the disc and then machine or lathe the hubs to match the rings. Therefore, the hubs are not held strictly by two small pins, but by these two large bands that can be machined to the hubs themselves, which carries much more weight. Both the bands and the disc are designed to fit on this machined shoulder. So this mortising jig will handle hubs from about 14 inches clear up to 26 inches. Now the post on one end I have welded permanently, so all the adjustment comes just from one end. There are also times when I would like to mortise a tapered hole side to side. So this jig is also designed to tilt side to side to allow just for those type of mortises. So this is kind of the evolution of my mortising jigs. The first one I seldom ever use. The second two I still do. So now I need to mortise these hubs for the Spanish cannons. This hub's a little rough on one side, so I'm going to smooth it off so that my large disc for my third mortising jig can be attached. Now I have hollow chisel mortisers that range from 1/4 inch up to 1 inch. Generally I'm going to open up a hub with a 3/8 bit. So that's what I'm going to use on this to initially open up all my mortise spaces. When I'm mortising a hub that I've made out of oak or ash or hickory, anything larger than a 3/8 just is really difficult to get to work. A 1/2-inch chisel is just very difficult to get to penetrate on hard wood. These mahogany hubs are not excessively heavy, so I don't have to use the heavy rings on the end. I'm going to just use the center bolt on the opposite end of the indexing disc. Now on a wagon hub, the back side of the spoke mortise is tapered. On a cannon hub, the leading edge is tapered. So here I'm staying back about 3/16 of an inch so I can make the leading edge the taper it needs to be. So with these mortises initially opened up with the 3/8 bit, now I'm going to step up to the 1/2 inch. Then I'll cut these to about a 15/16 wide mortise. Then eventually I'll go to the 1-inch hollow chisel mortiser and clean them up to 1 inch. And since I have my mortising head adjustable, I can now swing the head to the side to cut the taper and the mortise on the leading edge to match the spoke to give us the dish that we need on these wheels. Now, since the shoulders on the spokes are square, we have to accommodate for these square shoulders on the tenons of the spokes at the location of each mortise. During the process of doing the first hub and experimenting with the reaction of the hollow chisel mortisers to the mahogany, I didn't do the 3/8 opening up on all the hubs. I found that the mahogany was soft enough that I could start with the 1/2" bit and therefore just make 2 passes instead of 3 before I got to the 1" hollow chisel mortiser, which also helped speed this mortising process up. So this was the process of mortising, getting ready for the spokes in the Spanish cannon wheels. Thanks for watching.